Hello, everyone, and welcome to Smart Oceans 2020. I am Seth Zippel from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and I'm joined here by
from MIT.
And the both of us, we are so happy that you're joining us today for the third and final day of Smart Oceans 2020. So today we will be sharing with you what has happened over the last week, what the outcomes of the workshop are, and how we can come together to accelerate the future of oceans. We will also have a panel with the National Science Foundation for a live Q&A. And finally, we will announce our social media competition winners, which really great submissions. We're very excited about this. So again, the purpose for organizing this conference is to blue sky the future of oceans and accelerate convergence towards impact. So let us tell you the story of how we got here. 6 months ago, the state of Massachusetts imposed a lockdown due to COVID. And during this time, Fadil and I started having regular virtual meetings to brainstorm how we could collaborate. And because we come from different fields, we quickly realized two things. First was a challenge, where we realized that our disparate disciplines do not speak a common language. The second is an enormous opportunity for impact if we could get together to create bridges between our fields. So when we became aware of the NSF Convergence Accelerator, we realized that this is the ideal opportunity to create bridges across our communities. As you will hear shortly from NSF, the Convergence Accelerator aims to accelerate convergence towards impact. And because of this, the success of this conference may lead to significant funding similar to past topics which have received more than $50 million. So we reached out to NSF. They agreed to give us seed funding for this conference, and we announced it to our communities. We saw enormous excitement, which reinforced our own excitement for creating these bridges. So how much excitement? In less than 3 weeks, more than 900 participants from across over 400 institutions have registered to attend. So on this slide, you can see just a small sampling of all of the logos from these different institutions. Also, our plenary and convergence sessions on Monday have been viewed over 1,700 times. That's between our live web feed, the Twitter, and the Periscope feeds. And in addition, we had over 300 members join our Slack channel with lots of activity. Over 1,000 messages have been sent on this channel. And so who's participating? Our participants are joining us from a wide array of academic disciplines, from numerous government agencies, also from industry, from foundations, and from NGOs. And these participants bring with them an interconnected web of diverse interests between sensing, observations, to robotics, exploration, to biology and visualization. So we are coming together here under the charge set forth by NSF's Convergence Accelerator mission to support use-inspired, goal-oriented basic research, encouraging rapid advances through partnerships that include multiple stakeholders. So we take from this mission some key questions. Use-inspired is really the why. Which problems need addressing? The goal-oriented is really the what, like what can we build and create to achieve this progress? And then lastly, the partnerships are the how. How can we build teams towards this goal? So we are so excited to see answers to these questions reflected to us, even from the start of Monday sessions through our visionary plenary speakers. So our plenary was kicked off by Peter Domenico, who showed this slide that addresses the why. Why our oceans need innovative thinking and accelerated progress. Peter highlighted the broad and large challenges that lie ahead, including things like climate change and weather, renewable energy, our changing Arctic, food security and aquaculture, and the warming oceans and their effects on corals and changing ecosystem health. Peter's talk was followed by Margaret Lainonen, who outlined an amazing vision for the what. She started with a quote from Walter Monk that we saw echoed throughout the day through some of our even various lightning speakers. And that quote was that the 20th century was the century of undersampling the ocean. Margaret turned that around and shared a vision of a sampled ocean for the 21st century. And her words were so eloquent, I feel like I just have to directly quote what she said. She said, we want enough of these things so that we are awash in data, the luxurious spatial distribution of continuously operating sensors and instruments that allow us to indulge in inductive exploration of massive data sets to reveal the relationships and processes that we don't even know and can't form hypotheses about. With this large task ahead of us, we heard from Don Wright. Don from ESRI shared this innovative geospatial tools that could be ready to take up the large influx of data from such a fully sampled ocean and provide scientists, decision makers, and stakeholders visualization tools so that this wash of data does not blow right past us. And David Lang also shared his vision for the Ocean Maker movement, drawing parallels between the CubeSat program. David envisioned a transition from expensive and exquisite to low cost and distributed. This is increasing access, expanding and inviting innovation to unlock entrepreneurship and accelerate public-private partnerships. And of course, we had the famous Bob Ballard, who took a step back and showed us his thoughts, his reflections on paradigms over his very decorated career. And he described the evolution and how the growth goes to consensus. But once we reach this consensus, we are already missing the new paradigm, the new wave. So Bob's really stressed the need for funding these high-risk, use-inspired research programs so that we can accelerate the new paradigm rather than extending the old one. I'd like to overview our workshop sessions that happened on Wednesday. Our plenary speakers set quite the challenge for us, and all of you came together to help us tackle these challenges in our 4 workshop sessions across 18 breakout groups on Wednesday. We had over 60 participants in each workshopping session, representing 47 different institutions, and each breakout group was charged with answering 4 themes of the Convergence Accelerator program. What are the challenges that are facing us in the future of oceans? What cross-cutting partnerships do we need to address these challenges? What deliverables can we achieve in the next 1 to 3 years? And how do all of these programs unite into some cohesive whole? So we're still analyzing this massive amount of input that we received from everybody who came and participated in the workshops on Wednesday. And but we did want to share some of the early findings, and this is a word cloud that we've made from all of your discussion notes. So you can see some threads that you might have expected, like data, technology, sensors, but we also noticed that there's really lots of input into community, policy, people, citizens. And so there's a lot of connections here that we need to make this vision a reality. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over to Fadil here to take over for the second half of this presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Seth. So as we sifted through these recommendations, we wanted to balance 2 competing questions. On one hand, we wanted to be able to address what are the biggest and most pressing problems facing the ocean. But on the other hand, we also wanted to be realistic and ask about what can be funded, what can funded teams do in 1 to 3 years. And we wanted to identify the challenges that thread these 2 questions. So as Seth said, we're still synthesizing these results. But as we thought about them, we realized that the best way to think about these challenges is along 3 axes. The first one is the things axis, back to the Internet of Things, which Margaret was talking about. The second one is the people. And the third is the connective tissue. What connects the things, the people, and the things and the people to each other? And when it comes to things, people raised all sorts of questions about the power and the scale at which we need to operate and the big data that we need to work with And how can we make this low cost and enable services like localization? But how do we also do this without spreading and polluting the ocean with disposable technologies? And when it came to people, there's a whole set of other questions that we needed to ask and answer, and challenges that we need to address. How do we make usable systems and usable things for people who are the end users? How do we connect to communities and involve them? How do we ensure that our outreach is diverse and inclusive and welcoming? And how do we engage with policymakers so that we can ensure that these efforts are translated into broad action? And finally, what is the connective tissue that brings all of this together? From the connective tissue between the things, the communication and networking, to the standards, to the open standards and data, and the interfaces that we need to develop. These challenges are broad and hard, and so they do require cross-cutting partnerships. And when we asked our workshop participants, what are these cross-cutting partnerships? We got very excited by the disciplines that were covered. The future of oceans is going to be integrative. So we need input from computer scientists and data scientists to come in to develop networks, learning models, AI, and tools that can organize the big data and work with observational oceanographers so that we can make clear observations and make inferences off of them. We also need buy-in and integration from the engineering and maker movement so that we can build things and deploy them, but we can build them in the right way for the right purpose. And we also need biologists and ecologists and chemists to come in developing the sensors, and also in making sure that we are asking the right questions. And we also need people from the social science and ethics community and economics community to come and tell us, how do we inform these big challenges, and how do we address them properly while engaging with the wider population and different communities. And we need to also be able to communicate these and express them. And for that, we need participation from people from the arts and design disciplines, as well as media and communication experts. But even if you take a look at all of these disciplines, you realize one thing, which is that we've been taking only a disciplinary view. We can also think about this from a completely different perspective, which is the people's view. So who needs to be involved? And of course, we need the scientists and the engineers. This photo here is from Ryan Kastner's talk on Monday, where he provided a lightning talk about how he's engaging different scientists and engineers in his efforts. And this also includes social scientists as well. And we also need citizen scientists. We need the people to come in. This screenshot is from Christine Warden-Page presentation, also on the third day. She's the CEO of eOceans, and she gave us a vision of how we can bring in citizen scientists and develop these platforms around them. And David Klein also during his lightning talk talked about how we can involve coastal communities and bring them into this as the solutions and into defining the problems. We also need participation from artists, designer, and communication. Over here, this is a submission that we got in our social media competition, and we'll get back to it later on today towards the end, where it shows the importance of being able to bring in artists and designers to communicate. And we also need to make sure that we're involving students and the educational sector. This here is an image also from Dr. Kristen Grimes' lightning talk on the first day on how we can make this diverse and inclusive. And there's many other people that we need to involve. Politicians, we had some of our younger crowd recommending that we involve gamers in this, which I thought was very interesting, and it's again multidimensional. And this is what happens when we bring in new folks and we into our vision. But then we can also start talking about government agencies, and some people said that we need to involve the government agencies as well. And of course, here we've been talking to NSF, but there's also other government agencies that come in play and that have participated, including ONR and DARPA and NASA and USGS. And there's yet a fourth type of partnerships that we can bring in, which is from industry. And there's many industries that need to be involved here. So for example, this is a photo from Bruce Howie telling us how we need to involve the telecom industry so that we can use the cables that are already connecting the ocean floor as a resource. We also had CalWave participating, and they're envisioning how we can develop energy and renewable energy solutions for the ocean. The defense industry has a lot of expertise, and they've also provided us with a vision of how we can use a lot of the networks that are already in place to enable the next ecological sensing networks. And Don Wright from ESRI talked about how we need to combine geospatial data as well in the geospatial industry. And this photo here that I have is from the Timoana project about how we can involve fisheries in this process in a lightning talk that was given by Julie Jakubowski. And finally, we want acceleration from NSF, but also from accelerator programs like See Ahead, which has joined us throughout this week. So there's so many cross-cutting partnerships. So how would the teams look like that would be able to come together and take on this charge? And as we thought about this, we realized that the teams need to have integrative partnerships. And what that means is that you need at least two types of stakeholders. One is you need end-use domain knowledge stakeholders. These are stakeholders that are familiar with what the final needs are, so that we make sure that we are solving the right problems. And we also need tool design expertise, so that we make sure that we are designing for the end use cases in the right way. By incorporating people who have domain knowledge, we know that we are definitely addressing use-inspired research, and we're ensuring both impact and relevance. The combination of the teams ensures convergence, and having tool design expertise ensures that we can have acceleration through subject matter expertise. And our participants in the workshops provided so many examples, and we will just name a few. So one example was on marine biologists and machine vision experts and AI experts coming together so that they can understand new ocean species and be able to develop new classification algorithms. And these are hard problems, as I will show you in a bit, that these are very hard problems, because even from within the computer science community, you need to take a different view to develop solutions for sparse marine data. You also need physical oceanographers and sensor makers to come together. These are other types of teams that can also have convergent impact. Other proposals included getting video producers with marine ecologists and NGOs so that they can tell the right story about the oceans. And you need mobile developers to come together with coastal community organizers and ethicists so that we know that when we're doing citizen science, we're making sure that we are involving everyone who is involved, who needs to be involved in this process. And there's many others that came about. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to go over all of them today. But these teams need to be integrative, that combining both domain knowledge and tool design. So what should these teams do? What are the deliverables that people told us they can do within 1 to 3 years? And this was a very hard question because the challenges are so big. And so how can we create the inflection point and accelerate impact was a challenging task that we asked people to address. And we realized that most of these deliverables fell under two different types of categories. The first one was, how can we develop low cost, easy to use, and extensible system? And these three features are extremely important. You need them to be low cost, so that because ocean technology today is rather expensive. You need them easy to use so that many people can use them and so that we can accelerate convergence and impact. And you also need them to be extensible so that they can plug into the entire ecosystem. And there were a lot of concrete ideas that came out there. For example, developing new databases for big data of ocean data, for big ocean data, databases that are searchable, that are standardized, and which people can sift through and analyze data and perform interesting types of query on ocean information. Other types of systems were ultra low power or self-powered sensor networks that can communicate and that can also be extensible so that they can be easily deployed. So these would be both low power and low cost to enable us to cover wide areas of the ocean. And there were a lot of challenges and interest in enabling seamless underwater GPS and navigation so that we can get location tag data, but also so that we can enable seamless navigation for emerging industries like mapping and mining. And we also need reliable sensors, chemical, biological, and optical sensors, so that we can, and they need to be able to last for a long period of time, including in some extreme environments like polar or Arctic. And there's also a need for novel AI algorithms, novel machine learning algorithms and AI for sparse ocean problems. So for those of you who are coming from a computer science background, we know that this is an area, for example, that is called sparse recovery. And going back to Margaret Lainonen's talk, she quoted that the 20th century was that of undersampling. So how do you strategically sample and how do you make inference on sparse data? And these are just some of the examples that fall under the classes of deliverables within 1 to 3 years of low cost, easy to use and extensible systems. The other type of deliverables that people came up with was sustainable movements that can empower communities. And these movements need to involve people and be reproducible. So, for example, how can we develop accessible tools for citizen science and organize, and how can we develop hubs that can engage with locals and make them a first-class citizens as we take on these problems? And how do we do video production for ocean and climate problems that both demonstrate the importance of these problems, the impact on society and the world, and also depict scientists as being interesting and doing interesting problems and working on exciting work? And how can we also develop integrative curricula that for this field and for ocean and a blue economy that can integrate beyond just the technical knowledge with how do you engage with policy? How do we make sure that DEI is fundamental? And how do we also teach about the business tools? And finally, how do we develop tools that allow us to monitor utilization so that we know that we are not overutilizing or overpolluting our oceans? Now, this is a large number of deliverables, and these are some of the ones that people have proposed that can be performed in 1 to 3 years. One of the most challenging questions that we asked our participants in the workshops was, what is the coherent whole that brings all of these together? And the answer to that is that the coherent whole is smart oceans. It is oceans that are intelligent, standardized, and accessible. Actually, I want to scratch that. We don't want them to only be intelligent. We want them to be connected, and we want them to be connected at scale. And we don't only want them to be standardized. We want them to have open standards and open data. And we don't want them to just be accessible, as if accessibility is something that we are endowing on people. We want them to be inviting, so that people are excited about joining us, and so that they feel welcome to jump on board. So where do we go from here? On the first day, you have seen videos from our live plenaries and lightning speakers. We're now in the process of doing professional captioning and uploading them on YouTube so that we make sure that these videos are accessible to everyone. We're also going to write a short report summarizing this week and planning a path forward. We will ask people who have actively participated in our workshops for giving us feedback. And we will then send this report to NSF. If it is successful and we are chosen as a track, NSF will allocate significant funding for convergent teams. Past topics have received more than $50 million, and cross-cutting teams will be able to apply in an equitable fashion for a competition to receive between $1 million and $6 million for their deliverables. But as we wait for NSF's response, let us continue our discussions on Slack. There's already more than 300 members and 1,000 messages going around. And we've seen already people coming together from across disciplines, now with a common and shared language, trying to form teams to take on these big problems. On this note, we would now like to invite our program managers from the National Science Foundation to join us for a live Q&A. If you're on a webcast, please use Slido to ask and upvote questions here. And we will try to ask the most upvoted questions to our program managers. And with this, I would like to ask our program managers from NSF, Laura Campbell and Pradeep Fulay, to join us now. And I will stop sharing my screen so that we can ask them the questions that came on.
That was a really wonderful summary of everything that's happened in the past 2 sessions. Thank you, Fadl.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. Thank you, Fidel. Just wanted to point out we have one more person, Chris Sanford, who has a background in biological sciences, and Chris is also part of the Convergence Accelerator team. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Welcome, Chris. Chris, would you mind also showing your video as a panelist? Great. So we had a few questions already that came through Slack and through Slido, and we will start answering these questions for you. We'll start asking you these questions. But before we start asking these questions, I have a broader question. What are your thoughts on this week and how the program has gone? What are your thoughts on the convergent vision that we've put forward today and how it relates, most importantly, to the vision and charge of the NSF Convergence Accelerator?
I think you've done a really amazing job, even in less than 24 hours, of synthesizing all of the elements that really matter for the Convergence Accelerator. You've hit really effectively on this idea of deliverables. And I was so excited to see the diversity of participants in this meeting, because it really brings together exactly what you said, what you reiterated for us, that you need all of this different expertise, not just disciplinary expertise, but the expertise that comes from working in different spheres. So you do need citizens, you need communities to talk about what they really need and what the challenges are that they feel. You need all kinds of scientists and engineers, absolutely, including citizen scientists and social scientists, to really make sure that you're getting that whole idea together of what can we do and how can we do it fast. So I really think you, at least for me, and I'm just one member of this process, I think you've made a great case for the convergence and the opportunity for acceleration, that there really is a lot that we can do in a short time, given that there's been so much effort already, but in these isolated, I hate to say silos, because nothing in the ocean is necessarily so columnar, but in spaces that aren't well integrated, but have the potential to be. Pradeep, what would you add?
Oh, absolutely. I think as Dr. Ballard, one of your plenary speakers pointed out, he's super excited about the Convergence Accelerator, and we also are very excited about this topic. It does bring in, if you look at NSF, it does bring in engineering, it brings in computing, AI, machine learning, of course, biological and oceanographic sciences, and the challenges that you face and the challenges that you pointed out do actually require essentially the expertise from these multiple disciplines. And on top of it, it requires very deep convergence. It's not simply interdisciplinary, it actually requires deep convergence. And if you look at IoT, that is, say, underwater Internet of Things that may be passive or active, from somebody trying to develop a low-powered, high energy efficiency, low-power radio, acoustically driven radio, to all kinds of things. I mean, I'm so excited about this. And also my own background is really material science and engineering, electronic devices, flex electronics. So you look at soft robotics, you look at advanced materials, and then you look at some of the other challenges related to sustainability, which is the broader overarching theme here. As you know, Fidel and Seth, the weight of fish in the ocean by 2050 is projected to be equal to the weight of plastics in ocean. So, there are huge sustainability challenges that there are no boundaries to those. So it's not simply a problem for us, it's a global issue. So I really congratulate you and commend you for really, you have really started something very, very exciting. And I am very, very pleased the way the response has been, I think that kind of speaks for itself. I don't need to canvas anymore for that. So I'm very, very pleased, very impressed. And I really want to thank everybody, all your plenary speakers and all the workshops. I attended some of the discussions in bits and pieces, and it's very impressive. So congratulations, and we hope this will go somewhere. That's our expectation.
Great, thank you very much, Pradeep. I want to second what you're saying and thank everybody who has joined us from yourselves as well for having faith in funding this conference in the first place, to all our plenaries who have made the time on such a short notice. It has been accelerated, but we've been telling people that if it's chosen, the funding would also be accelerated. To our lightning speakers, to our many workshop participants, as well as to the amazing community on Slack, which have been participating and sending messages back and forth. Chris, would you like to add something before we move on to some of the audience questions?
Can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yes, great.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties this morning. I apologize. I'm very excited to hear about what's going on. You know, I think Pradeep and Laura kind of summed it up. And I'm very excited about the outcomes of this workshop. So, you know, I'm here to listen and take it all in, and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have more of a comment that came in on Slido, and I actually feel like that ties in well to one of the questions that we had from Slack. So the comment, which I'll start with, is that this should be smart ocean singular, not smart oceans plural. The Earth has one big ocean with many features. So this is actually really great. I love this comment because it shows how connected everything is and really how it's an international, really large scale effort. And this really ties into one of the first questions we got. We did have people from all over the world join us for our Slack conversations and from our video feed. And one of the questions we got are how are international collaborations handled in NSF's Convergence Accelerator Awards?
I'd like to answer that because prior to coming to the Convergence Accelerator, I was in NSF's international office. And so I hope that I have long experience with this. And the first thing I want to tell you is that international collaboration is very important across all of NSF, not just the Convergence Accelerator. We believe very firmly that expertise is global, and with the ocean, I like the singularity of it as well, with the ocean, as well as many other topics, the challenge is global, and we need to work together with everyone to make sure that we have the best outcomes. All right, so that having been said, I sadly must remind you that the NSF is a domestic funding agency, spending US domestic tax dollars. And therefore, we primarily focus on supporting the US side of international collaborations. Now, that US side funding can absolutely and enthusiastically support travel opportunities for US personnel to go wherever they need to go, for workshops, for meeting, for data collection, for data integration, for all of those things. It can also provide support for foreign people when they're in the US working with you on whatever it is they need to do. There are co-funding opportunities. We have some existing co-funding mechanisms, especially with the UK, with Israel. There's some activities with Germany. So obviously, you know, the bigger players, they're direct co-funding opportunities. So you can, in some cases, just submit one proposal, and then the two international partners work out the funding collaboratively. But besides that, we do have a lot of relationships with a much broader reach of international funding sources, so that we can at least advise you on who the appropriate funding partner might be in another company, in another country. And then finally, in some isolated and limited cases, the NSF can provide support to a non-US based person or entity when their role in the project is so crucial and so essential that the work really couldn't be done without them. And you just have to make a really strong case for that in the proposal materials that we receive. And I need to tell you, it is part of the review criteria. So the reviewers and NSF would be looking at that and looking at the importance of that person or organization's role. But we basically want the science to happen. And in this case, not just the science, but the overall acceleration. And we appreciate that that takes a very large number of entities working together, and we want to facilitate that.
Great, thank you very much, Laura. I'll ask the second question. So one question that we got also on Slack originally is, NSF tends to be risk averse due to limited or stagnant funding. How do you suggest we bring greater interest to oceanic research to bring in more funding?
I'll start on that, but I think that Chris and Pradeep will have more to say. I would say that what you're already doing to bring this this topic, this suite of topics really, up in the public eye is a huge value for increasing the global funding opportunities for ocean-related research. So making it more visible, making something that the public is passionate about is so important. The risk averse is a slightly different angle, because it's not just a lack of funding. It's also the way we pursue what's important. And that's something that NSF is aware of, that there's a tendency for our review processes to be a little risk averse. And as an agency, we're working on that. And I would say our office is especially cognizant of the need to be more risk taking and to try to push the boundaries.
Let me add to what Laura just said. I think the Convergence Accelerator program, and the fact that this program started by NSF in the last, it's a new program. It is a different way of doing business. And I think it does address the risk component. And what we are really looking for are two things. One is projects in which there will be an opportunity created for different disciplines to come together in a very unique way. Public-private partnerships, you can work with government labs, you can work with internationally, as Laura just pointed out. And it's a gated process. The Convergence Accelerator process is much more like what you would see in private sector, in which there are go, no-go decisions. So it's a gated process that really allows actually us to take risk. There is phase one, many, say 50 or so ideas might come forward. And then in phase two, which is substantially more amount of funding and longer period of time, we would pick only 5 or 6 ideas out of say 50. And those 50 are actually selected out of 400. So if you really think about it, the best of the best ideas that are high risk, that will have high potential for impact. And it's really a platform. We don't expect, let me make one point, which is, whether it's $25 million, $50 million, we understand these problems are so huge that it's really a drop in the ocean. No pun intended. But we really believe that it's a platform to really bring the different groups of researchers together, different communities together, and then hopefully other agencies, other organizations, foundations, they can pick up and really give continuation ammunition to carry this forward. So we are very different from the traditional NSF programs in two ways. We are not as risk averse. We would love to have high risk but transformative ideas, and we are open for business. One more thing, which is this program can fund industry directly. The industry can be a part. It does not need to be a university. So I think all these things, if you really look at it, this program really stands out in terms of its aversion from risk aversion.
Fantastic. This is very encouraging for Seth and I, and I'm sure for many people who are watching us today. I want to ask the most voted question and start answering it myself, and then move it to the panel, because I think it's a broad question. The most asked question is, I am full, so it's from Rosa Zhang, and she says, I am full hands for openness and collaboration, but many areas of ocean technologies are pretty closed communities. How do you encourage and reward openness? So I will start with sharing a couple of things, and then I will also try to move it to both Seth and NSF. 3 years ago, I was, by all standards, an outsider to the ocean communities. I had not worked on oceans, and I had never published in oceans before. I come from wireless networking, from computer science, and I started talking a lot with ocean researchers. And I think, believe it or not, now I do feel that I am part of a large community, and so I can try to share what my experience has been. I think there are a lot of big problems. And so when we reach out to people and telling them, is this a problem? They'll say, yes. We're proposing this solution. Like any scientist, they're gonna tell you, oh, we're not sure if this is gonna work. And so then we went ahead and we started building things ourselves. And so this is really where Seth and I felt that the Convergence Accelerator comes in, because it allows interdisciplinary teams to try to take on big problems and big ideas and work on them in an integrative approach. And we've seen that firsthand in some of the workshops where people from very different disciplines came together and started thinking, oh, but this is what we call this, and this is how we might be able to work on it. And part of the deliverables that we're proposing is, can you build open standards and open technologies? I mean, I can also say from my own experience, my team open sources our designs, our code, and our data for people to be able to reuse them. And if the Convergence Accelerator takes this as one of the evaluation criteria, and I'm sure that it will be as one of the broader impacts, then that would be a great way to use it as a vehicle to encourage openness. And because we're all in this together, and the problems are big enough, and there's more than enough hard technical problems for people to work on, especially at the intersection of discipline boundaries. And with this, I would like to turn it over to NSF to see if they'd like to add something.
Yeah, so Fadel, that's really spot on. And one of the things we do recognize, I have recognized this for past 30 plus years in my own experience, that everybody loves interdisciplinary research. Everybody loves interdisciplinary research in places like NSF, other places, as long as it is funded by somebody else's discipline, right? It's all game when it's somebody else funding it, So the nice thing with Convergence Accelerator program is we provide the entire budget. We are not dependent on engineering directorate or size or some other external agency. We welcome, co-funding with them. But at the same time, that's what makes this program very unique, is it would fully fund a totally interdisciplinary platform activity, regardless of what discipline one comes from. And just yesterday, I was listening to a presentation from Microsoft on AI and on quantum computing, and some of these challenges that you have, with respect to simulations and forecasting, would be solvable by using quantum computing. Some others using control systems and so on and so forth. So the nice thing with Convergence Accelerator is we fully fund all of the projects. And like I said before, we hope they become an inspiration for other organizations to step in and carry on these activities as they begin to see what's coming up.
And just adding to that, we actually require these integrative partnerships in the proposals that we receive, and we won't fund anything that comes in siloed. So it has to be that way. So start making those relationships now in the hope of this funding opportunity, and because there are other things that you can do together as a diverse group. There are lots of opportunities out there, and we want and require those interdisciplinary and interagency groups, and then we're going to fund all y'all.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask the next most upvoted question on Slido, which is from Mike Saraki, who asks, the UN Decade of the Ocean begins this January. How can Smart Oceans engage with this international focus?
I might push that back to you, Seth. We want to see those mixed, diverse groups that involve partnership with lots of different kinds of organizations and lots of different disciplines. So I ask you in the community, how can you engage with that? Who and how would you reach out to that really important initiative to build upon what's an international, I hate to say tsunami, but an international wave at the very least.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. And I would love to just, I know we have been saying this quite a lot, but I'd love to encourage people to talk about how we can do this on our Slack channel, where we have over 300 people already signed up. And Fadil, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah,
comment?
so one of the things that we talked about is making movement. This is one of the deliverables. Of course, we do not have the recipe to make the movements. And NSF is clearly willing to fund primarily US-based, but also with international collaboration, potentially with international collaborations. So I think what this being a highly upvoted question shows that this is a very important problem, right? And this means that there's a lot of people thinking about it. So maybe join Slack, ask people who is interested in this, and start a channel on that, and see if you can create a team that, if this is chosen as a track, is able to put forward a strong vision towards that. So that's what I would like to say. I would also like to add that Margaret Lainonen is a member of the committee, the executive committee of the UN Decade of Ocean. And she shared with us how this vision might actually tie back into it. So I strongly encourage people to look at her amazing plenary for that as well. Great. I also would like to add the next a comment from Margaret, who is joining us on Slido. Margaret said, I don't think that NSF is risk averse. I think that we as reviewers are hypercritical towards proposals that don't demonstrate that they can be absolutely successful. And as much as I would sort of like to say that NSF is risk averse and they've rejected my proposals because they were too risky, I do think that even when, as a reviewer, I am fairly critical. And the hope, of course, for the Convergence Accelerator is for it to be a little bit different, not as consensus-based and more deliverables-driven and convergence-driven. And there you can be more ambitious, as Laura and Pradeep and Chris have said today. But I would like to also let them comment on this as well.
Yeah, no, we try to address that by bringing in different kinds of reviewers. So we include people from all kinds of industries. So depending on the topic, big industry, startups, and VC types of people who are more sensitive to risk. Now, VC is sometimes not that risk averse, but we try to address this by bringing in a very diverse reviewer pool in terms of backgrounds, stages of career. So more early career people tend to be more risk enthusiastic sometimes. And that's the way that we're trying to at least initially modulate that. And so as a shout out to all of you who are in the Slack community and watching, you can volunteer to be a reviewer. We are always looking for reviewers. And so go to the NSF website and just type in whatever topics you research. Find the program officers who are working in that area and just send them your CV and say that you want to review. And for our program, most of NSF is really into PhDs, but for our program, we have reviewers with all kinds of educational background. It's about what you know and what you can help us to understand about the value of what's being submitted to us.
Fantastic, thank you. We have a number of questions still on Slido that are coming in. I think some of these might have been addressed by some kind of similar themes to some of the previous questions. I'm going to go to a slightly more specific one now. This is from Bruce Howe. For NSF proposals for these programs are the number of proposals from a single institution limited like an MRI, Muri?
Yay, great question. No, there are no limits on the number of pre-proposals that can be submitted. So when a topic is first announced in a solicitation, it's a very short pre-proposal, and as an individual or as an institution, you can submit as many as you are willing to put the time and intellectual effort into. Once we select phase 1 proposals, we're unlikely to give, because of the effort required, we would not make an investment at that point in a single PI in more than one of these, $1 million proposals. But no, throw it all in. Give us all your ideas. We want to see it all.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lara, for all this encouragement. So another question that just came in from Jules is, what are your relationships with geosciences, and in particular, the OCE folks?
We had an OCE person attend the whole workshop, and we had a geo colleague who's on our working group, our cross-agency working group, who helped develop this idea as a workshop. So I would say we're talking with them a lot, but I, as a non-ocean scientist, I don't have the same relationship with them that you do. So as researchers who may have like current funding from OSH. So you should reach out to them too. Tell them how great this workshop was, how important you think it is, that they should call me and Pradeep and Chris and get together on it. And I think that might lead to an interagency question, because we do want to build upon the investments that other agencies are making and hopefully push their goals forward, because it is one ocean and we all want the same sustainability from it. And so similarly, if you are in another federal agency and you don't already know me, I would like to be your friend so that we can talk about it. But we are also reaching out to colleagues. I mean, obviously at NOAA and at DOE, but there are lots. I mean, this is a huge interagency space, and we're trying to build more of those relationships now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that answer.
Seth and Fadel, I'm sorry, I have to leave. I have another grantees meeting coming up, so my apologies. But again, congratulations for a wonderful workshop. We really hope you will come up with good recommendations for us to try to turn this into some kind of a funding opportunity for a very diverse community. Okay, so, and you're in good hands with Lara, absolutely. So thank you again.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you.
I will ask one more question, Lara, that was also upvoted and that was different and that came on a Slido. So Alec Wang, I think from Hui, asks, is the convergence focused on cross-cutting applications and societal impacts, less about answering specific questions, and how the relationship is viewed? Or how is their relationship viewed, I assume?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think the important thing to emphasize is that the Convergence Accelerator is much, much less about hypothesis-driven research. So the specific parameters of the question are not as important as what the impact could be on society from meeting your end goal. So we expect that there is still research to be done. So there's a research element, of course, but it's not about creating the perfect hypothesis and the exact methods to match it. It's much more about what are the end goals and how you're engaging the broad community of stakeholders to really meet those end goals. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Lara. So I see Margaret has chimed in once again about comments on the UN decade. So Margaret says, next week, the UN Decade will release a call for action for programs, multidisciplinary, multi-year, multinational efforts, an opportunity to promote these ideas. So that's fantastic. Thank you for letting us know about that, Margaret. I'd also like to, this one's a little more technical again. This is from Megan Cronin. Megan asks, what is the timing of the what is the timing of an NSF Convergence Accelerator proposal?
That is a great question. So the first thing that you would want to know is, when would a solicitation be released? And I cannot tell you that in part because it's not totally clear, but more importantly, because it would be unfair for me to give that kind of information in this limited space if I wasn't telling the whole world at a specific time, this is when the solicitation is coming out. So we don't know for sure, but it would be like everything we do relatively soon, like less than a year for sure, way, way, way less than a year. So a solicitation will come out. Then the timing after that is their topics in the solicitation. Ideally, one of them will have something to do with ocean sustainability. And there is about 6 weeks to 2 months, maybe longer, for pre-proposals to come in. And pre-proposals are usually, what they've been so far, is 2 pages to summarize what you would do and with whom you would do it. So what are you going to do? How's it going to impact society? Why should we care? And who are you bringing together? Both that interdisciplinary expertise, but also that expertise from all these different kinds of organizations to make it happen. We have an exhaustive review process on a lot of pre-proposals. We down select, and then there's about a month to 6 weeks to submit a full proposal. And a full proposal, as you know, NSF hardcore, it's 15 to 20 pages of stuff with letters of collaboration and all of that. So you need to be already thinking about that when you submit your pre-proposal. Otherwise, you won't be ready to submit your full proposal. And that down select also happens in record time. Pretty much everything we do is accelerated. So we make awards in the same year that all of this happens. So for instance, the next call will be going out to spend FY21 funds, and we are currently in fiscal year 21. So start now. And then the other thing to tell you, which you can look back at the 5-minute introduction that I did in the first session, is phase 1 is 9 months and phase 2 is 2 years. So you basically have 3 total years if your project makes it through that gate that Pradeep mentioned at the end of phase 1 to go on to phase 2.
Great, fantastic. Thanks, Laura. We'll take the three last questions, and so that we can end at 1 and we can announce our social media competition winners. So one question is from Bishal Thapa. He asks, can a DoD contractor company lead a response working group with academic partners, or we reverse the relationship and work with academic partners as lead?
Yeah, that's a little in the weeds, but funding can go to industry, but to a big DoD kind of contractor, that would look a little fishy to the American public. Like, why are we giving some huge company that already has gazillions of dollars a relatively small NSF grant? I think the funding most logically should flow, though, to the lead institution that truly is coordinating everything and has the ability to disperse sub-awards. So, you know, there's flexibility there.
Fantastic. We have a question from Ken Kostel, who's asking, we have an incredible legacy of outreach and education in the ocean sciences. How important is broader impacts in a convergence accelerator?
So you didn't see, I just did like this for the amazing outreach efforts that the ocean community is already known for. Yes, build upon that. Broader impacts are the second and equally important review criteria in any NSF proposal. We require that you talk about how this matters, and it can matter to society in a lot of ways, and education is one of those ways. The actual outputs that you make for society are another way that a Convergence Accelerator proposal demonstrates broader impacts, but absolutely showing how it impacts the communities and learners is huge, and you should build upon everything that the ocean science community is already known for.
Thanks a lot, Laura. If I may add one more thing, it seems that what is typically falls under broad impacts might itself be a deliverable based on our discussions during the workshops, in the sense that community, like making movements, was one of the deliverables that people have also talked about.
Woo, woo. Yeah.
I will ask one last question that came from John McManus, who asked, shouldn't the oceans also be forecastable? This can be achieved by attracting simulation systems to the data to forecast potential future scenarios. So I guess you can also comment on that.
Yeah, I agree. Forecasting of everything is a big a big reason that we have so much data-driven activity now. Exactly what needs to be forecasted and for whom and how is what we would want to see in a proposal.
So I'd like to follow up with that and our last question on Slido, which is, will there still be a bit more discussion about our next step and what you need from all of us to help move this effort forward? So what we would like to do, Fadil and I are going to continue synthesizing all of the results from this wonderful week. And we're going to continue talking on Slack, and we're going to solicit feedback from everyone who's been an active participant in this meeting on to help us summarize and make sure we don't misquote you or miss anything that was really important that you felt was brought up during some of the talks on Monday and some of our discussion groups on Wednesday. So please be active on Slack. We really encourage you. We'll be using that moving forward to communicate with everybody who has been just so wonderfully involved and just very excited for all of this to come together. So with that, I'll pass this back over to Fadil.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Laura, for joining us, for making the time, and to Pradeep and Chris for also joining us. It's been great to have you answer a Q&A live. And with this, we're going to move back to our social media competition. So the Seth, I will leave the honor to you to announce the winners of the infographic competition.
1 second, Fadil. I need to.
So I can announce. So we got a large number of submissions, and it was very exciting. The winner of our social media competition infographic, who's gonna get a $500 prize, is Arun Kumar, who put together a very exciting infographic on how ocean oil spills impact the ocean and what causes them. It was a very exciting one. He synthesized data from different sources, and we had a committee of around 20 people from different backgrounds come together and choose who are the winners. So Arun, you will be hearing from us on how you can get your prize. We also got very excited about another infographic, and so even though originally we didn't have this in mind, we decided to have a runner-up. And so the runner-up for our social media competition infographic is Kelly Lance, who put together a very inspiring infographic on the ocean and on how plastics in the ocean, there's a circle that we would like to break with ocean plastics. So congratulations to Kelly. And our runner-ups will get, our runner-up for the infographic will get $250. This is something we decided to add because we got very excited about the infographic. Seth, would you like to take the social media competition for a picture?
Fantastic. So now we'd like to announce the winner for the social media picture challenge. The winner was Chris Parsons. Chris Parsons, who's at Kraken McCrake on Twitter, shared this wonderful image of penguins, which we just thought was stunningly beautiful, and shared this message with the tweet. Priorities for the ocean. How will current and predicted environmental changes affect marine species ranges, population structure, habitat use, and health? How do we conserve species bearing in mind these many changes? So thank you, Chris Parsons, for this wonderful submission. This is just, this is fantastic. We're really excited. We also have a winner for the video competition. The #1 selected video was by Benjamin Werb. So Benjamin, congratulations. We should see if we can play your video for everyone, Fadil.
So I'm going to play the video.
On the coast of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, there is only one nearshore buoy providing data for miles of shore. This is a problem because it assumes that in the area that the buoy covers, all the parameters are the same. Imagine if in addition to this single buoy, each of these surfers below could become virtual buoys, recording important information about ocean health. Enter the SmartFin, a surfboard fin with a range of sensors that allow it to measure sea surface temperature, location, and other critical wave statistics. After the launch of the first generation SmartFin in 2017, we have collected thousands of data points across the world from hundreds of surf sessions. This project uses extraordinary individuals, known as surfers, to not only conduct research about the changing oceans, but also to tell a story through science. SmartFin combines the immense grassroots power of the people with the unstoppable force of the scientific process, taking a step in the right direction towards healing our planet.
Congratulations, Ben. And you, the video competition, the big prize is $1,000. You will also be hearing from us on how you can receive this prize. There was also another video that we got very excited about. And so we also decided to have a runner-up for our social media competition video submission. And the runner-up will receive $500. The runner-up was submitted by
We were deeply moved when we heard that due to global warming and ocean acidification, we have lost 30% of the world's coral reef cover in the past 30 years alone. Research has shown that during coral bleaching and recovery, temporary architectures can function as refugee camps for small fish and sustain the ecosystem. We created self-deploying kirigami and branch-based structures which are made by applying hydrogel beads on a substrate. These are easy to fabricate and thus can be deployed on a large scale in the future. To replicate similar structures, we have developed a computational tool for designing generative shapes and simulating their morphing behavior. One day, we hope we will be able to deploy this in the ocean and help to revive corals.
Congratulations, Harshika, and congratulations to all of our winners. And with this, we would like to wrap up Smart Oceans 2020. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Seth, would you like to add closing words?
Just, I would like to echo that. Thank you all so much. Everyone has been so supportive and really brought and helped make this come together. We had just such amazing plenary speakers, convergence and lightning session speakers. We had really great active participants during our Wednesday workshops, and we're just so thankful that you all really showed up to help support this effort. Once again, we'd like to reiterate, we're going to keep the Slack channels open. So use this as a medium to help kind of identify, think about teams and bring some issues to the Slack channels. And yeah, thank you all so much. And I'll hand it back to Adil.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. This has been a very exciting week, starting with the plenaries. We're so happy that you have decided to join us, that you made time out of your day, that you joined our workshops and volunteered and invested yourself. Thanks to NSF for funding this, and we hope that this is selected as a track. But we hope even beyond this, that the collaborations that have emerged from these workshops will continue and sustain even beyond. And you've heard about other announcements that extend even beyond this convergence, that might be more aligned with your interests. With that, I would like to close this, and thank you everyone for joining us. Happy Smart Oceans 2020.